Hello and welcome to this evening. Thanks ever so much for coming. Do feel free to put your cameras on, but if you'd rather not do that, that's absolutely fine. Can I ask everybody, please, to mute themselves? Simply then, if you need to cough or anything else, that's fine. But we've got 44 people who signed up for the webinar. And obviously not everyone can make these things live. So they'll be watching the replay. So I want to make it as smooth as possible. So I'm just going to share my screen, but not the music anymore. Oh, here comes somebody. I tried this out last night with my community, so I know it works, which is good news, really. So let's try this. So you should all be able to see the start of the presentation. So if someone could just nod, then I know that you can see it. Yeah. Oh, you've got, yeah, great. Excellent. I'm assuming that's a yes, Marina. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to get cracking. Before I start, I've got a couple of thank yous I want to make. So the first one goes to Amy Bell, who's not here, but Lisa knows her. She is an amazing designer and she created my beautiful dragon images, which there are three, which you will see during this presentation, this one being the first one. And she's also a Colour Mirrors teacher like I am, so understands how colour works and the power of colour. So feel very lucky that we have her in our community. And my other thank you goes to oh, there's something in the chat. Let me just check. That's fine, Julie, that you don't want to be on camera, but thanks for letting us know. My other thank you, oh, it's gone, jumped ahead of itself, goes to Moira Bush, who has been with the Colour Mirror system for 18 years or so, and who actually did her own forecast back in December, and I listened to it and it gave me lots of ideas because I didn't actually agree with everything that she was saying. But that was great because I thought actually it's worth me doing one myself. So she inspired me to do that and also to up level or up my game and actually do PowerPoint slides. So you're getting the benefit of that as well. Let me just mute Teresa. I think that was you. So anyway, so that just gives you a note. I'm going to also just explain very briefly that there will be regular points. There's 23 slides, which is quite a lot. Regular points where it's a sort of a slide where I ask a question to give you the opportunity as you're watching this live to ask me a question or the one that's on the slide or ask any other question so that if there's anything that's not clear as we go through, you've got those chart options then to kind of say you want to find out a bit more. And you know, it's probably easiest if you use the raise the hand thing because then I can see who it is. So I hope that's clear. And we'll get started. So let's go. First slide is an agenda, simply because some people like lots of structure. So I thought I'd just explain what we're going to go through. So I wanted to give you an overview, if you like, of 2024. So there's a slide on that. Then we're actually going to go through what was 2023 like for you and what did it look like in colour energetically. And you can see whether that is similar to the experiences that you had. Then we're going to really dive into 2024 and look at some of the key symbols from 2024 and also some helper bottles, some things that might help you if you get stuck or you're finding, you know, you're dealing with some of the more challenging energies of the year. Then, because when we work with colour, we also work with numerology, we're going to look at how do you calculate what year you're going into this year. So there'll be a bit about that, and then we'll look at cycles, because obviously we'll have been in those kind of years before. And actually what's interesting when we do that is we can start to see patterns emerging, and I will share with you the cycles that I've just been through sort of last year, and then the 9 years before that and 9 years before that, so that you get a sense of what that looks like. And then in case people are thinking, gosh, this year looks a bit tough. I mean, there's lots of good things about it, but you know, it's like all these things, it can go one way or the other. We'll have a quick glimpse at 2025, and you can see whether or not that resonates with you, and gives you something else to, you know, sort of think about, or, you know, in terms of, is that what you're thinking about? And if you even have thought about 2025, because it's a year away. And then we'll end with what's next. So that's what we're going to cover tonight. So let's just start with the overview for the year. So you'll see on the right-hand side, there's a bottle. That's a bottle in our system. It's bottle number 16. And if you're familiar with the tarot, you might understand what the tower is. And if you're not, that's absolutely fine. There's no reason why you need to know about that. And the reason I've picked this bottle is, for me, the energies of this year very much relate to that bottle, because there's two predominant colours for me, and that's olive green and violet. And as you can see in this bottle on the right, the bottle is olive green and lilac, which is obviously like a pale violet. So the tower is really about change. So, you know, when you know something's not working, maybe a relationship's not working, but you've known them for a long time and you don't want to end a friendship. And then suddenly something happens and the whole friendship implodes, or the situation, you know, you're in a, maybe you're not enjoying your work, but you keep doing it because, well, it pays the bills or whatever, and then you're made redundant. It's that kind of almost shocking change that when we go through it, it's often pretty uncomfortable. But actually, when we come out the other side, we think, oh gosh, that's the best thing ever to happen to me. So I don't know how you feel about those two colours as you see them together. Do you like them together? I've been noticing that, interestingly, I've been wearing them a lot. I have a sort of snoody scarf that's got the olive green in, and a neutral sort of beastly beige, as my mum would call it. And I wear that with a lilac sort of fleecy top. So it's quite interesting. I've noticed that I've been wearing it a lot. So I quite like the colour combination. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but just notice how it makes you feel. Another thing we're going to be looking at, and you might have noticed it in the title slide in between the dragons, there was an 8, because numerologically we are going into an 8 year. So we're going to look at what does that actually mean, and what might we be looking for in terms of it being an 8 year. And one thing I think is different to what I'm saying is that when Moira was talking about this, she talked about the violet flame dragon and it being a violet flame dragon year. But I'm not going to go to that place, because for me, I think that downplays the importance of olive green, and we actually need the two colours together. So that gives you a sense of the overview. So now let's have a quick look at 2023. And I'm going to just describe it for you in the way that I see it through colour. So you've got on the left-hand side here, the three, well, for me, what the three key bottles of 2023 are. So you've got the 23 bottle, which is actually a double indigo bottle, although the top fraction of the bottle looks a little bit lighter, but they're both indigo or royal blue. And then that's, if you like, what we would call the low frequency or the ordinary level bottle. And then at a higher frequency, you've got the Gaia bottles, so G23, which is a sort of diamond clear over a coral. And what's interesting is that if you take the two colours, indigo and coral, you get the 17 bottle. And I think, you know, that helps us to understand the year a bit better. So let me explain a bit more about that. So people had different views about the year, but for me, I felt that 2023 was really about going through a series of initiations. So if you found it tough, you weren't alone. things happened that made you look at your patterns. And it was a great opportunity to start healing some of those wounds that we may have got through childhood or other things that have happened to us that, so my own view is that we all have trauma in our field, and trauma is merely an unmet need. It doesn't mean we've all been beaten or abused, but there's stuff in all of our systems, and that's what leads to us triggering sometimes with other people or in certain situations. So what 2023 was great at doing was giving us another opportunity to look at some of those wounds. And the G23 bottle, the coral and diamond clear bottle, really is about us coming to a place of unconditional self-acceptance. And what that means in terms of the wounds is actually seeing the wisdom in the wounds. And I'm delighted to see in the audience tonight is another Colour Mirrors teacher, Teresa, and she actually came up with that phrase, wisdom in the wounds, when we were together in September in South Africa, and I absolutely loved the phrase, and I've used it loads. So thanks, Teresa, because I do think that's the way to look at it. And as I said earlier, these two bottles together make what we call in the system, the 17 bottle, we call it the wish bottle. So it's a bit like the star card in the tarot, if you're familiar with the tarot. And I always say, it's like, be careful what you wish for, because often people might go, oh, well, I wish my business was like their business. But actually, do you want everything that that person has? Because we don't see the whole of somebody's life and what they're working with and their issues. And I think if we sort of chunk up a bit, the whole of the year was really about challenging us to look at, the old ways of doing things. So in particular, where do we try and control things? Where do we want to have a firm answer about how things are going, what's actually happening? And the potential in the year was coming to a place where we could surrender to what is. Just, well, this is the way it is, and I don't have to beat myself up about it, and I can go with it. So it was a really great opportunity to learn about surrender. And what I think is really fascinating about the 17 bottle, with it being royal blue and coral, in some respects, you could say that it represents the masculine and the feminine. And how wonderful is that? Because whether we're male or female, and although there may not be any men on the live call, there are men who've signed up for this. We all have masculine and feminine energies within us. And it's about being able to use both in harmony and to get that balance right for ourselves. So that's my first take on the year. And then it was, if you look at it from a Chinese astrology perspective, it was a water rabbit year. And we're still in it because it goes on until the end of the 9th of February. So 10th of February is the start of the Wood Dragon year. So if we're thinking about that, then you've got 3 bottles again. So for me, you've got the 7 bottle, because we were in a 7-year numerologically last year. And it does look, if you look at that top bottle, rather like water, because it's all turquoise, a light turquoise over a dark turquoise. And then obviously the higher vibrational bottle was Gaia, or G7, which is a copper and a clear. So and then together they make another high frequency bottle called Return from Atlantis. So let's look at what that actually means. So for me, if you look at Neptune, which is the name of the 7 bottle, Neptune is about plumbing the depths, really getting into I wouldn't say the nitty gritty, but into the weeds, weeding out those weeds, seeing where they are. And actually, to do that deep work, we need to have lots of rest periods. So it was a year when we would have been sensible to do quite a few retreats, take time out, create space for ourselves, so then that we're not constantly on the go, and we can do a degree of integration while we're working. And then when we look at G7, it's predominantly copper and clear. Well, what's really interesting is that if you take the 3 primary colours, red, blue and yellow, they make copper. And if you take the 3 primaries in light, they make white light. So isn't that cool? There's a really sort of a real connection there. And really, what's that saying is about the importance of being grounded. And when the more grounded we are, the easier it is to allow old wounds to come up for healing and to deal with those past patterns. And then, as I say, if you take the copper and the turquoise, that is turquoise. I know it looks a bit green in the G3. That bottle really is about saying to us, it's perfectly safe to express how we feel, our emotions whilst we're here on earth, and it allows that transformation. And I suppose probably because I'm in my 50s now, and have gone through the menopause, was thinking about the role of the elder, the role of the crone, embracing being a crone. It's all about that sort of transformation. So what we noticed is, or what the challenge was when we think about all of these energies, was that trauma we all have trauma in our body or in our, auric field and so on, but it only leaves the body through deep rest. And yet it can be really difficult for people to give themselves permission to have that, or to know how to relax deeply. And I was talking to another person that's here today, Jane, about that, because she's a yoga teacher and often offers retreats as well, that often it is easier when somebody guides us through that process of deep relaxation, and can be incredibly beneficial. And when we've had that rest, or whilst we're in that period of rest, then the potential is that we have that space to dream our world into being. And that will take your spirituality to the next level, because, the currency of dreams, the current is not money, it's actually ideas. And so the more that we give ourselves that space, the more we get, oh yeah, that's the way to do this, or I hadn't thought about looking at it in that way. And when you take these two energies together, of the 7 and the G7, and they're blended in this way in the G3, together we are that connected and grounded. So it's easier to see that all the drama that surrounds us, whether it's within our own personal, families or what have you, or the wider world. So with, the awful stuff that was happening, that has been happening and carrying on in Israel and Gaza and so on, we can see that all that drama is just a distraction. And we see it as the distraction it is, because we're in that more connected, wise space. So then I thought it might be helpful just to look at some of the key words for 2023. And so the way I wanted to do that through colour was to take the 7 bottle, which represents the year, last year, because 2, 2 and 3 make 7, and the 23 bottle. And I feel that together they make the 34 bottle, which, although it looks turquoise here, is actually blue and turquoise, and it's called the Whale. And there's a bit of a shout out here for Lisa, who is another one of our Colour Mirrors teachers with us this evening, who really loves whales. They are very special creatures, because they carry the Akashic records, so they can connect us energetically to a much deeper space. So the words that I came up with by looking at these bottles was, initially, it's about, as we said in the 7, deep integration. There's a connection to the high priestess energy in the indigo, which is about the person that has authority and has all the information and decides when to share that with people. And that combination gives us wisdom. And another theme was faith, having faith and trust, even if on the outside, in the 3D world, the external world, things didn't seem to be going well. But faith and trust that all will be well. And that, coming from that place, we get to magic. And then overall, it's really about honing and refining our intuition, so that we know when to make a change of direction. So last year there was in the water rabbit year, one of the significant things was might be working along one way, and you make a sudden pivot in a completely different direction. So mine, for example, was I had this opportunity to go to South Africa to become a teacher of teachers within colour. And I said for the first half of the year, no, I'm not going. And then suddenly I felt intuitively that I was being called to go. So in a very quick, short time period, I made that change. And fortunately, there was still space for me to go and be part of that. And so when we work in that way, we get miracles. And for me, I would define miracles merely as the ability to have different perspectives. So we might have the same issues that we're facing, but we see them in a different way. And in being able to do that and be that, we create new ways of being. Okay, so that takes us to our first stop point. So the question I want to ask you is, having heard all that information, I appreciate it was quite a lot of information in a short period of time. What was 2023 like for you? Now, what I'm going to try and do is see if I can, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute so we can come back to the screen. So if anyone wants to share a little bit about how they found 2023, or if they've got any other questions about those first few slides, please, speak up now.
Okay, so I found it mentally and physically challenging.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah, one of my most difficult years, but nevertheless, ploughed through. And when I look back now, I think, wow, gosh, yeah, I achieved a lot. But boy, was that tough. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that.
Well.
It was a really tough year. I can remember feeling really, really low, probably about February time. Making some decisions that I never thought I would make, but actually did help in the long run. So yeah, it really called for a lot of strength, I would say, 2023. Does anybody else want to share anything or anything about the slides? Or thank you, Marina, by the way, appreciate that.
For me, what it make resonance is in the slide, it says a series of initiation.
Yeah.
And I find that, yes, there were many things that happened like in my life that were like initiations. I didn't see it at that time like that, but it makes sense.
Oh, that's brilliant. Is that Elder? I don't
Yes.
think. Lovely to have you with us. It's nice to have somebody new, and thank you for sharing that. Yeah, when you go through it, it's not exactly fun, but if we learn from it and grow from it, then, it puts us in a really good position for this year. So if it was tough for you last year and you work with it, then you're in a really good place for this year. If not, watch your help.
And thank you. I really don't know how I have this in my calendar today, so I was very curious.
I'm not sure how you came here, but it's lovely to have you. It was I promoted it on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. So maybe you saw it on one of those platforms and registered. So it's fabulous to have you with us. Okay, so I'm probably going to, unless anyone's got a burning question, I'm going to carry on because we've got quite a few to go through. But I think the other thing is as we share, these things and people are sharing and there's sort of some similarity, it makes it all feel easier to be with, because obviously when we're going through it and if we're on our own, it can feel like, God, what have I done to deserve this? So thank you to Elder and Marina for sharing a bit of their experience. Really appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to start now looking, this is a bit more of a detailed slide, so I'm going to try and put that over here, saying a little bit about what you know, some of the symbols of 2024 and looking at it from a colour perspective. So what we do is we look at the two numbers, so the 20 and the 24. They're the two bottles that make up the year. And what I think is really interesting is that from memory, the 20 bottles, the magenta is in the lower fraction, but in the 24, it's in the top fraction. And what we say about that is that the lower fraction, it represents the unconscious, and the top fraction represents the conscious. So that feels really positive, because magenta is the color of divine love. So really having that connection to love, whether one calls it divine or not, call it unconditional love, and feeling that inside ourselves and being able to show that to other people, then that helps to raise our vibration. But if we'll have a quick look at the 20 bottle in totality, it's hard to see on this screen, but it's magenta and copper. So we talked a little bit about copper. Copper is about that grounding, earthiness. But the bottle itself is called Awakening. And obviously we've got it for 100 years, from the year 2000 to 2099. And if you think about it, even if you feel nothing much changing, because we've still got wars and all of this stuff, and maybe your life doesn't feel like it's changing much, there's been huge shifts. Because now, instead of having sort of 3 books on mind, body, spirit, you'll probably, and if you went to a bookshop, you'd probably find a whole like 8 shelves on mind, body, spirit stuff, at least, you know. And if you think about mind, body, spirit fairs back in 2000, there was probably 1 or 2, and now there's probably 1 in every town or village in the UK. You know, there's sort of everywhere. There's opportunities to explore. And I think it really accelerated from 2012, which is, you know, was a pivotal year. Some people said it was the end of the Mayan calendar or sort of age, and the age of Aquarius was coming in. So it feels like there's a much, and I feel, because I wrote my book with my former business partner, Kath Roberts, in 2015, edited it in 2016, and it was published in January 2017. And actually people that have read it since then, in the last year or so said, wow, it was really ahead of its time, because it was talking about some of the things that are much more accepted when we talk about energy. It's called Colourful Boardrooms. It's really about colour and leadership. So what does a red leader look like, or an indigo leader, and so on, and what happens when they overdo it, and what's the antidote to that. So there has been a massive shift, and I'm sure if you're here, especially those that have been working with me, there's quite a lot of clients and people that I know well. You know that, well, you know, we're all on the spiritual path, whether we recognize it or not. But you might have noticed yourself sort of going deeper on that journey, because it's like a spiral in many respects. And then as we go that deeper, you know, if there's more potential within us. And you know, if you're not sure about that, as you go into 2024, you might see some of your old beliefs completely crumbling away and just changing, and getting that new perspective on life. And for those of us that are doing this work, as I said, there's at least another couple of Colour Mirrors teachers on here, and other people within the system who will be watching the replay. You know, just know that actually what you're offering and is going to be much needed. And even if you're a spiritual teacher in a different, you know, using a different modality, that actually there's going to be more and more people looking for what you offer, looking for some underpinnings and ways to kind of make sense of their life, you know, and that can be through yoga and all the other ways that we work with energy too. So then we have a quick look at the bottle 24. Now, I mean, I love the name of this bottle: love, money, and creativity. I mean, who wouldn't want more love in their life, more creativity, more money? You know, it's great. So as I sort of mentioned the piece around the magenta, and really what it does is helps us connect more fully to our higher self. and recognize that actually our higher self knows best. So it can really, the more we work with our higher self and don't get trapped and caught out by the ego or the lower mind, the more we're able to let go of the need to control every aspect of our life, especially come up around relationships and around money. And I mean, I personally, for years before I got into colour, used to tell people, oh, I'm not creative. I mean, what nonsense, because everyone is creative. It doesn't mean we're all artists and painters or photographers, you know, it's in many different ways. So it's worth bearing that in mind. So, oh, I jumped ahead, sorry. Oh, must seem like I've gone through. There we are. So the other thing to bear in mind is actually what's interesting about the 24 bottle, because magenta and olive green are actually complementaries on the colour wheel that was created by Goethe in the 18th century. And so very briefly, olive green is about new beginnings, but I think it's even more than that. I think it's really about feminine leadership and feminine power, new ways of being and doing things, and about collaborating with others. And that the more you work with others, it can be really challenging because they might have different views to you, but actually you can see more and be more and create something even bigger than yourself and your own vision. So I think that's what we're being asked to do. And this is a key aspect, I feel, of this year. So to really grab onto that, but also because they are complementary colours, and you know, they don't, I wouldn't say they clash, but they aren't probably colours people very often wear together. There is also an aspect to 24 which has a sort of stop-start flow, energy flow. So you can, 1 minute you can feel really in the flow, and next minute think, God, really not in flow here. And that is part of the energy of 24. So do be aware of that. And the other thing I would say to you is that certainly when we talk about magenta in our book, we say it is the alpha and omega in colour. So it comes at the beginning and the end. So when we're having a magenta year, or if you're drawn to magenta as a colour, it's really because you want to go deeper on your spiritual journey. It may lead to you questioning your purpose and existence. And you, even if you're really loving life, you might think, oh, there's not something just not quite right in my life at the moment, or there's something missing. So just be aware that that's in the energy of this year. Okay. Right. So now we'll have a brief look at 8 and what that means in colour. So what I've done here is put all of the 8 bottles from the system onto this page. So you've got the, first of all, the violet bottle, and I said that violet's one of the key colours of this year. That's called Saturn. Then we've got G8, which is the only black bottle in the system. That's called Illumination. And then C8, which is another magenta bottle, but it's almost as light as rose pink on the top. And that's called the Bridge. And really, I suppose one of the key energies of violet is service, of wanting to be in service, of getting beyond our own shit and rhubarb, as I like to use the word rhubarb a lot. So if you think about it, a lot of coaches in their work, you know, if you're a coach or you've worked with a coach, without, you know, well, what is your purpose? And if you get into the spiritual stuff, actually, people would argue, and it's in the Course in Miracles that would say this, for example, that the truth is we all have the same purpose, which is to be of service and to model love to a world that is starved of it. And so really what we're saying with violet in some ways is that it's all about the inner journey becoming your focus, and the recognition as within, so without. So how we feel on the inside, the amount of peace and joy we have inside is what the amount that we'll see on the outside. So if we're all in conflict and torn and what have you internally, then we're likely to see that in our external environment. And what it's asking us is to stop judging ourselves and allow space so that you can actually get the gifts of wisdom and understanding. And what's really challenging actually with the Saturn bottle is it's quite sort of solid and slow, and there's a real restrictive energy about it, which is hard to pick up from a PowerPoint slide. I get that. You know, quite a heavy energy. And part of that is that's important is that we basically stop rushing things. And I say that as somebody who has a 4 life path. So I don't like following processes and doing things in a step-by-step way. So I have a terrible tendency to rush things and then fall over flat on my face when I've kind of missed a key step and it doesn't quite add up together. It's a bit like building your house on sand and then rather than on, you know, solid ground, and then a storm comes and the whole thing blows down. So there's an aspect of that in the energy of the year as well. Then a lot of people don't like black, not necessarily, I mean, they might wear black, but, you know, the idea of being in the dark is a bit terrifying, you know, nightmare territory. But actually, what the invitation with the G8 bottle is to step into our shadows and do the work. And I can assure you, because I've been in dark places myself in my life and stepped into my shadows more than one occasion, that actually that when I've sat in the dark, I found it quite warm and inviting. And the interesting thing is that although the bottle looks black, it's actually made of deep magenta, because the idea is that actually even in the darkness, love is present. We may not be able to see it or feel it, but it is there. And really the darkness, the void, if you like, is the incubator of all consciousness. So my thing to you would be to do yourself a favor and play with it this year, because it offers you the possibility of reclaiming your true essence, death to yourself, to the self, to become alive, which sounds maybe a bit of a tautology. So just take a bit of time to reflect on that idea. But if we can do that, do the death and rebirth thing, we will then become the light bringer, illuminating the darkness for others. And then what perhaps helps us with all of this is C8, a beautiful bottle, which is called the Bridge, and it's like the soul star chakra. So if you're into chakras, you have the 7 that go up to the crown. The soul star is just above the crown, just above the head. And it's the bridge between body and soul, which allows the birthing of new projects. So it's a really yummy bottle, in my humble opinion. So, yeah, you might think, oh, gosh, you know, with violet and black, that's sort of dark and heavy. But actually, a way of looking at this is just to remember that it's the face of change that you're seeing in action. So if we embrace change like a new bridge being presented, inviting us to cross over to access something different and new adventures even. So that's another way of looking at that. Okay, so I want to spend a little bit more time thinking about the tower, which I mentioned right at the beginning. So you can see the tower bottle at the top here. And interestingly, we have 2, oh gosh, sorry about that. 2 bottles in our system, a fully olive green bottle, so which I haven't presented here, which is called the Magician, and then a double kind of lilac bottle, which is the one at the bottom, which is called Merlin. And I think they both help us to understand in a different way the energy of this year. And also on the right hand side, we've got the 2 essences that relate to the wood dragon year. So we've got the wood essence at the bottom, and we've got in this case lilac angel at the top. Now I just want to say a little bit about Merlin. Merlin is a bottle that was created in 2022 by Melissa Jolly, who's the founder of the Colour Mirrors system. And historically, Merlin had a couple of other names, which was Merline and Merlina, because basically Merlin was both masculine and feminine. And he or she is the ultimate magician and actually represents pure consciousness. So if you've done any Kabbalah work, in Kabbalah, you've got the left-hand column and the right-hand column, but you've also got a column right down the middle of the tree of life, and which is pure consciousness. So that is where the magician is. And the age of Aquarius is the age of the magician. So it's like the magician's in the middle, and with one hand pointing up and one hand pointing down. And it's really about bringing all the things that have created polarity, like science and religion, for example, bringing them together. And we are starting to see that in our world, I would say. So it's quite interesting to think about that idea in respect to this year. Wood traditionally shows us where there are any remaining traces of anger in our system, and it's often stored in the liver. And as we know, anger, if we don't process it, is, you know, pretty corrosive. And really, you know, it comes back to our purpose. Well, one of the key aspects of our purpose here on earth is to forgive everyone, you know, a bit like, you know, Jesus is said to have said on the cross, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. And Merlin, in a way, as the ultimate magician, enables that level of transmutation. It's a very, very powerful bottle. And as you'll see on the next slide, we have a choice about how this happens. We can do it with grace, or as I've inferred already, if you didn't do the inner work last year, if you haven't been through a whole load of initiations, sweeping change is likely to occur in 2024, which is what is being indicated by the Tower bottle at the top. So let's move on. Right, so here are my other two dragons. I hope you enjoy them. And I just really love these two here. So as it happens, Amy created the one on the right first, and sorry, the one on the left first, so the one with the green teeth. I'm not sure how you're seeing it, and then the one on the other side. And for me, the one with the green teeth looks really fierce, and it isn't someone you'd want to meet in the dark. And the one on the other side looks much more feminine. There's a bit of playfulness about it. And as Lisa was saying when I shared with her, because I call her my dragon lady because she works a lot with the dragons, you know, actually represents the color of the 24 bottle, because it's got much more magenta and olive green in that particular one. So I think in some ways they represent the masculine and the feminine. And certainly in Chinese circles, they would say that a dragon year is very yang. So there's a lot of that masculine energy coming through. I, as it happens, grew up in Hong Kong. So I've always had a real interest in Chinese astrology. And if you asked any Chinese person, they would all say they want to be a dragon, because it's considered the most lucky sign of the 12 signs. They tend to be very charismatic individuals. They could charm the pants off anybody, sell ice to Eskimos, you know, that kind of thing. And they tend to be very prosperous and very lucky, have lots and very, you know, and often make lots of money. So it feels like a really good combination with the love, money, creativity bottle in terms of bringing stuff about. And, you know, very exciting, really. And lots of action, and very different from the reflective year that we had last year in many respects, you know, plumbing the depths, looking at old patterns, you know, it's a very different energy. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what's coming. Let's move on. Okay, so I want to just explore a bit with you what it means to be in an 8 year. So many people would tell you that the 8 in numerology is about abundance and power. But obviously, when you look at the 8, it's got 2 circles in it, hasn't it? So it's kind of like it's mirroring back to you. So yes, we could experience this year abundance in 2 ways, either as very plentiful or as not enough. And similarly with power, it can come in an authentic way or be based on fear. And I think it's kind of interesting right now here in the UK, for those of you based in the UK, we're seeing the whole post office scandal unravel, you know, and we've seen so much shenanigans recently in politics because, you know, often the people that want power, as politicians generally do, you know, they're in it for themselves. And so things then don't tend to work particularly well. So we're going to be asked this year to look at the dualities and polarities in things, the negatives and the positives. And also, again, look at judgment. Judgment's a big thing in Violet, and also within this as well, within the 8. And judgment causes separation, because if we think someone's not done it right, or I don't want to be that, you know, immediately we're creating that kind of separation. And the request really is, or, you know, spiritually, is to let all of those judgments go, so that the 8 can really shine as a symbol of infinity, flow, and limitlessness. So what we're likely to see are possibly further issues around authority, systems and control. So going back again to that piece around the post office scandal and how, you know, certainly postmasters and mistresses were ignored and had to pay thousands, or, you know, imprisoned and put in, and it was all to do with the software issue, and they weren't, you know, they weren't responsible for it. And it actually took one individual to go, yes, sure, throw the book at me, tell me what I've done wrong, prove to me, show me the evidence, and that's fine. And when he asked that question, they couldn't provide the evidence because the evidence didn't exist. And so there's something about not putting our trust in those systems, because then they're not always right. They can be faulty. You know, it's the way people always used to trust the doctor. But of course, Western medicine has its place, but there are lots more, like energy medicine, other ways of helping to heal. So there's all of these things. And I suppose what we're asked on this journey is to recognize that service on a higher frequency seeks no fame. So it's not about reward and recognition or necessarily getting acknowledgement, but about being silent, humble, and simply kindness in action. So it's quite a big ask. Okay, so another symbol of 2024 is the planet Saturn, because, as I said, the 8 bottle, the violet bottle that we saw at the beginning, is called Saturn. So what do we know about Saturn? Well, Saturn is slow and steady, and so a good complement for the solid energy of the wood dragon. So one thing I didn't share about the wood dragon, unlike other dragons, they can't fly because it's kind of solid, but it's very grounded. So it's a good year for putting down the foundations for long-term plans. Saturn is about remembering not to rush, push, or force something into happening. So if we just allow, then we'll actually see things happen. And it's about remembering that just as in the world of finance, things can go up or they can go down. You can make money or lose money. Things can expand, or you can go into recession and depression. So it's about, I suppose, and that's why I've put it in bold, it's the key words here are taking personal responsibility, rather than looking to somebody else to save us. We are the ones that we've been waiting for, effectively. So it's also about looking at self-value, and, you know, there's a sort of regalness towards Saturn. You know, where do you know, do you see that as important to you, or do you want a simpler life, and will that be just as abundant? So it could have an expansion, an aspect or an element of expansion or contraction by, you know, doing things like decluttering, changing your space. But ultimately, where we want to get to is this freedom to express our spirit and claim our power and affirm our worth, whatever way works, or whatever that means for us. So in the final slide of this section, I wanted us to have a quick look at bottles that might help us. So I'm just going to move this over here. So intuition is, hang on, I knew that was going to happen. Sorry, excuse me. Really just go with a feel of which colour is calling you. I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit about some, and we've seen some of these bottles already, but that's the way to choose if you were going to look for a bottle to work with over the next month or so, or over this year. So what I will say though is, if you think you're having a tower moment, so lots of change, then it might be important to work with the tower as a way of embracing that change, and also work with Merlin or the fully olive green bottle, the Magician. And if you're exploring what abundance looks like for you, then maybe work with one of the 8 bottles or all of the 8 bottles. Another way of looking at this is the bottles at the bottom here, the bottles that represent the year. So you've got 20 and 24, which we looked at, but you could look at the higher frequency bottles, so Gaia, the Gaia bottles, so G20 and G24, and as another way in. And also you might want to work with the bottle that represents your year. So we haven't got onto that, you know, the numerology of it. We're going to get to that in a minute, but I'm going into a 5-year. So that's why the 5 bottle is there, because that might be a good one for me to work with all the bottles that represent, you know, are important to me this year. But the other thing I wanted to share with you is that there is an amazing rescue remedy pack that Moira came up with, which I think is fabulous, and I have used it a bit. And that is kind of fire, which is the orange spritzer. I've got it here, and it's gorgeous because it smells of neroli. So you spray a bit of that with wood, which we talked about before, which somebody's on the call that's on the call tonight smelt the other day at a retreat I was running, and said, oh, it actually smells like wood. But it was a lovely smell. And then spritz a little bit of lilac dragon, which is the other lilac spray. And then you've got the 3 together. And as I'm spraying them, I know you can't see them through time and space, but trust me, you will get a sense of their energy. And then you just rub those in. And these are great, these essences, because they're obviously, you've got the color of them, but the smell as well. So the olfactory aspect of it, it can absolutely help you to shift state. So I definitely recommend working with those, and they make a wonderful combination of scents when you spray them into your hand and rub them together. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of this section. So I want to give you the chance to ask me any questions or make any comments on the key symbols, or if there's anything you want further clarity on. Now's your chance to ask a question. Or share something that you might have noticed already, just from the information that I've given. Anyone?
Okay, it's Hannah. I'm not sure if I think I've unmuted myself.
You have. Well done. That's amazing.
Hurrah! Good start to 2024. What was the G24 bottle again? Because I was just looking at that one on the last slide, and I was zooming in. I said, I think that's G24, but I couldn't remember the name of it.
Well, that's a really good question, because I don't think I gave you the name. So thank you for that, because I should have probably given you the name.
Pure coincidence.
It's called Reconnection, because it's like a very pale copper, so much more pale than the copper bottles, and a coral as well. And yeah, it's a beautiful bottle, Hannah.
Interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
I found it all really interesting. Thanks, Kate. I mean, as you know, I'm going to be having lots of change this year, changing career. So yeah, I think a lot of this has given me a few things to think about on how I approach some of the things coming up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know you love the essences, so you might
Yeah.
you might need your remedy rescue remedy pack.
Definitely going to need that.
Absolutely. Oh, thanks for sharing that. Really appreciate it. Anybody else got any questions or comments they want to add before we continue? Natalie, did you want to ask something? Because I saw you flick. Yeah.
It was just, it's interesting that you were talking about connecting more deeply with intuition.
Yeah.
Because I got this urge to buy this book to start going deeper into intuition, and I've started reading it.
Yeah.
And also there was this other element where I explored something at the end of the year last year where I just thought, okay, I don't know what it gave me was that I was not broken, but I could choose to look at my wounds with curiosity as opposed to where I had been doing it before, where it was like I had to fix myself.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, there's this kind of commitment of going, okay, I want to look at all the things that are not really working and
Yeah.
just become curious about them. Another thing I wanted to share is like one of my friends, he's quite an intuitive person, and he hasn't been working since June last year, and he's just doing a course on life coaching. And recently he's been really drawn to going in and meditating, and his meditation has taken on new depth.
Wow.
And although he's kind of has no money right now, he's not worried. And he feels like he's being called to something else, and that he's starting to get a sense that he's being shown where he needs to do. And he used to be an engineer, and right now he feels more and more that that's not where he's meant to be going. So I thought it was interesting what you were saying about these changes.
Sure.
That resonated.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's lovely to get examples because it makes it more real for people. Appreciate that. Lisa, lovely, did you want to, my lovely dragon lady, did you want to say something? Because I saw you come on and disappear again.
Sorry, I'm in the middle of writing research papers, so I have to mute
I
my
get it.
camera because
No,
I'm
that's
moving
fine.
around a lot. Well, having done the teachers, trained the teachers with you and really connecting with you and sharing that whale experience
Yeah.
with my soul sister here was amazing. Also with the other Color Mirror sisters. But you and I took this course from the prediction course from Moira, but I
Yeah.
like your take on it and going even deeper. And the last couple of years, I've created the Chinese zodiac bottles. So last year was,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So it started in with the water tiger a couple years ago,
Yeah, love
and
it.
then the water rabbit, which it's supposed to be pink on the bottom, but my bottles always color goes, comes, and does all that stuff. So it's interesting when you do the predictions for the coming year.
Yeah.
Just whatever information's coming through, and then to look back and see how accurate it was. But yeah, last year was definitely trust, faith, and flow really came to the surface. And now it's just like we're going into that 8 dragon energy.
Yeah.
So it'll be real interesting to see how people are upping their toolkits around
Absolutely.
spirituality and but yeah, last year was a doozy for a lot of us, I think. Still got another year to go, and then it'll be kind of like evening
Let's hope
out.
it gets a little easier, yeah. Oh,
I
thanks,
know. Be
Natalie.
careful what you ask for, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm loving your presentation. I'm getting a lot of information from it. So yeah,
Oh, thanks, sweetie. I appreciate that.
yeah. Thank
Because
you.
because Aurelia's also signed up for this, and I was conscious she was with us in December. I was like, well, I hope there's enough new stuff for people. Okay, well, we're going to continue on. I hope that's okay, Teresa, and then we'll catch some questions in the next bit. Right, so moving on. Oh, right. So this is quite an important one if you're new to the system, to just be able to calculate your year number. So this is the way you do it, because you might be wondering, well, numerological year am I in? I don't really understand these year business. So I've taken mine because I think that's the easiest way to do it. So I don't mind you knowing how old I am, I'm 54. But born on the 1st of May 1969, you don't take your birth year, you take the year. So 2024, which if you add 2, 2 and 4, you obviously get 8. And May is the 5th month. So it's 0 plus 5 for that. I'm doing it backwards weirdly, but you know, and first, so 0 plus 1 for the date, the day you're born on. So if you add all those up together, you get 14. And if you always want to have just one digit, so then you add the 1 and the 4 together, so you get 5. So basically, I am going into a 5-year. So you can do the same for you. So you take the day you were born on and the month, and you add it to the 8 for 2024, and that will give you your year number that you're going into. So hopefully that's all clear. And at the bottom here, you've got all of the bottles that relate to me in this year. So the 20 and the 24, I haven't got the higher vibration one, the G20 and G24, but you could add those as well. Then the 3/8 bottles, the 14 and the 5. There's quite a lot of bottles there. And I put those out because, again, if you're looking for bottles to work with for the year, I would always recommend you work with the bottles that relate to the year, and then your own the year you're going into numerologically. It's a great way to get some deeper insights. So as that was quite a lot to take in, and it's maths, and that's not everybody's strong point or mine necessarily. Does anyone have any questions about calculating their year number, or want to share what year number they're going into? Maybe share what the year number you're going into in the chat, perhaps, rather than all say it out loud, or we might be here a while. But has anybody got any questions? Is anything not clear, or was that clear enough? Because I know there's quite a few new people that are new to this whole thing. Oh,
I got lost, Kate.
somebody's an innate year. Sorry, what was that, lovely? Who was that? Marina.
I got totally lost. It was a bit
Okay.
too quick for me. So
Right,
I
so
didn't
just give me your birthday, Marina.
2/3/1969.
So you're born on the 2nd of March, yeah?
Yeah.
So that's 5 and 8 is 14. So you're going into a 5-year like me. So
Oh,
you
okay.
add the 2 plus
you.
3, and then I'm
Yeah.
just using 8 for the year. So that's 4. No, sorry, 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 plus 8 is 13. Sorry, I can't add up. 8 and 5 is 13. So you're going into a 4-year because 1 and 3
Okay.
adds to 4. So
Thank
I've
you.
just been in a 4-year, so you'll learn a little bit more about that. Candy's going into a 6-year. Julie is like the actual year of 2024. She's in an 8-year. Brilliant. Oh, and Teresa's going into a 5-year. How cool. Okay. Right. So that just gives you a flavour. And if, I'm going to move on now, but we might have some time at the end. If we don't, you can always contact me directly, because I think you all know me somewhere. Karen's going into a 4-year as well as Marina. So that's very cool. So yeah, we can do that, you can do that. So I'm going to continue because I'm conscious that time is going away with us. It's getting late here. Right. Okay. Let's go. So I will try and move these so we get them up there. Great. Okay, so let's talk about what do we mean by cycles when we're looking at 1 to 9. So I've basically looked at me, because I don't mind talking about myself, and obviously I've had time to reflect on this, and you might not have even thought back to when you were last in a 4-year, 5-year or a 6-year. But the reason we do that is it's another way of helping us to see patterns, see energetically, well, what's it like for me in a 4-year or a 5-year or a 6-year or whatever year it is. Well, if you go back usually about 9 years, but you can work it out by doing the same thing of taking the day you're born on, the month, and then adding up each of the numbers of the year, you'll work out when you were last in a 4-year. So for me, that was in 2014. So 2023 I was in a 4-year, so I've just completing a 4-year, and then 2005 before that. And the reason we do that is, then, as I say, we see what tends to repeat and what's the rhythm of that, what's it look like energetically. And you know, the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter how spiritual we are, there's always more work to do. So if we really know and understand the energy of a particular number, we know what to look out for, basically. So this is my life. So in a 4-year, we talk about 4 being the master builder. And if you think about a house, it's got 4 points, you know, it's sort of like the 4 corners, the walls, you know, that make up, you know, it's usually a rectangular shape, isn't it? Most houses. So you need to have solid foundations, and it's that ability to build it and to do it, you know, one step at a time and in the order it's meant to be. So we talk about 4s, we talk about the law of process, which is really difficult for someone like me, because I get really bored and think, I don't want to follow that process. And then I usually end up having in a bit of a mess. And what's really important, if we look at it from a color perspective, so yellow, which is the top fraction of this bottle, it relates to the mental. And you think about anything to do with mental health awareness, it's usually yellow. People wear yellow t-shirts, there's yellow branding around it. It's really the headspace, you know, because a lot of mental health is actually about, you know, when we get stressed, we're spending too much time on our heads, we're overthinking stuff. And the invitation is to go more into our heart, which is the turquoise at the bottom, and looks a bit green because the line, often in the bottle, there's a line between the dark turquoise and the yellow that looks green. It's actually turquoise into the feeling. How does it feel? What feels good? So the key in a 4-year is to listen to the whisperings of our hearts and not our head. Because when we rationalize is actually 2 words. It's rational lies. Okay? So we don't want to be telling ourselves any more of those lies, however logical and rational they appear to be. So here's some of the key things that I noticed when I reflected on this when preparing for this seminar. This year, I went to South Africa with Lisa and Teresa, who are both on this call, to do some more in-depth training with Melissy. And initially I said, no, I wasn't going to go, as I say, and it was only in May that I changed my mind, because we knew from January, but I wasn't going to go because I didn't think I had any more to learn, I mean, I didn't in terms of what the different colours mean, but there's always deeper learning spiritually. I wasn't sure what I was going to get. And then I just got a real strong pull to go. And I even explored that. Is it just FOMO, fear of missing out? If so, then I'm not going to go. But I realized, no, I felt I was being called, that it was my tribe coming together. And I'm so glad, because I wouldn't have met either Lisa or Teresa and connected with them in the way that I did if I hadn't gone. But when I said yes, I had no idea why I was saying that. And actually what's happened as a result of that, I sat with Teresa on the bus going to somewhere, and some stuff that she shared with me has brought new life into the foundation that I set up in January 2022. So just 2 years ago, with 3 other people. So that was a 4. And it's starting to get new life and be reborn, and through the energy that Teresa's bringing to it. So that's very, very exciting. In 2014, that was when I was asked if I wanted to train in colour mirrors. I'd experienced a colour workshop for a whole day and I loved it, and it made me feel lighter and more, you know, refreshed, or more able to deal with the challenges that I faced in my life at that time. But again, here we go. I'm very stubborn. 4s often are very stubborn. I said no, because I don't need another qualification. I've got loads of qualifications. Why would I want to train in colour? But when I stopped and I really listened to my heart, I knew that I really wanted to do it, even if it didn't make logical sense. And it was a big investment and really scary at the time, but it changed my life for the better. And actually my business took off as a result of training in colour. So I still use my coaching, but I use it, it's like coaching with colour. So I thought that was interesting. And then in 2005, which was the last time I was in a 4-year, I became a Reiki level 2 practitioner. And I actually heard a voice in my head. I heard my guides for the first time. And I had the previous year in 2004, or no, actually, sorry, it was in 2003, but I had experienced a miscarriage. And 31 days after doing my training and doing a detox of like no drinking and various other things, I became pregnant with my my eldest daughter. So another new chapter was about to unfold. So it feels to me like every time I go through a 4-year, it can be quite challenging, but new things start to appear. So I, you know, trained in colour in 1 year. I've gone even deeper in this year. And I became, you know, I realised I was going to become a mum the following year. So there we have it. That just gives you a feel or a flavour of why it's important to look at these cycles. And I really recommend that you do it, not maybe about last year, but if you think about what year you're going into, you know, when you last a 5-year, in a 5-year, if you're going into a 5-year, when were you last in a 6-year, that sort of thing. And what patterns can you see? Right, so this is just a little bit more on that, but more about you than me. So consider your own life and perhaps consider when you were last in the same number as you were in 2023 and what happened to you then. And as I just did, you can go back 2 cycles and see what kind of patterns are emerging. Now, you're probably not going to do that right now, but it's something, you know, homework. Not that I'm going to be checking up on you, but, you know, something to look at. And it might help you see what you really got out of 2023. If you're still thinking, God, it was pretty tough, I don't want to go back there, but maybe it'll give you that a further insight. And then, you know, we've already considered some of the overarching themes for 2024 and a little bit about the energy pertaining to the numerology of the year, the 8-year. Now it's about thinking about the numerological year you're entering and what does that mean? Now, unfortunately, we haven't got time to go through the numerology, you know, of each of the numbers between 1 and 9. But one thing you can consider is numerologists look at numerology in 2 ways. So when I learned it originally, I was always told it goes from one birthday to the next birthday. Because obviously that's when, you know, that's the number you use, your birth date and the month with the year. But some people, and I know Moira's one of them, and I have to say I never used to think this, but I could feel some of that energy already in December and certainly in this month. Look at it from the beginning of the calendar year to the end of the calendar year. So even if your birthday's in September or November or something like that, you might already be feeling the energy of, you know, the year you're going into in 2024. So just think, you know, are you noticing some of that new energy? I know that I have, certainly, and it's actually transforming the way that I run my business. So yeah, just have a think about that. And remember, you're going to get these slides after, so you don't have to make notes of any of the questions. You can go back and look at them and well, actually not the slide, but you can look at the presentation and then stop it and kind of you know, ask yourself the questions, so you don't have to remember them right now. So quickly, or is there anyone who would like to consider the question, what patterns can you see when you review 2023 and how is that shifting as you enter into 2024? And don't worry if you don't want to go there, because I know it's a lot to take on. Okay, I'm conscious of the time and as no one's got raising a hand, I'm going to keep going. But, you know, definitely have a look at that because I found it really helpful in terms of looking at some of my patterns and some of the rhythms of the year. So we will carry on. Let's see what's next. Okay, we're going to have a really whistle-top look at 2025. So if you're feeling a bit like, oh, not sure about 2024, after anything I've said or what Lisa then added to it, let's have a quick look at this. So you can just look at it in colour, and that's a great way to do it. And you can see that they look, I think the bottles for next year look a little bit lighter on the whole. You've got the clear bottle at the end, the C9. You've got the bright red as opposed to a violet. All of that looks different. Obviously, the turquoise and gold looks a lot lighter than the black, you know, and even the 25 bottle in some ways looks a bit lighter than the 24 bottle. So yeah, it could be a lot bigger energy because you've got the red and the orange coming in, but you know, obviously with all these things, other things come up. I mean, the red and orange bottle is called Mars, so it can lead to people being a little bit hasty and getting a bit angry about things, you know, but yeah, it's good, bright colors, passion, that kind of thing. And you know, you've got illumination, which is the black bottle, making way for faith, and that can bring a lot of hope with it. So that's quite interesting. And also 25 and G9 are actually the same colours, you know, sort of those. So you've got the deeper turquoise in the 25 and the light turquoise in the G9, the yellow in the 25 and the pale gold in the G9. And those are the colours of Atlantis and the sort of age of, meaning the age of Aquarius and stuff like that. So that's quite interesting because we've been in the age of Aquarius since 2012. It's quite nice to have the colours that represent that. And then you've got this sort of really, you know, it's sort of the light bearer, or the, you know, light in the clear bottle. It's so bright, and it's sort of suggesting, you know, we've done the work, we've crossed the bridge, then we're actually in a place where our body absolutely gets that. It's a kind of really bright white light. So that sort of integration at a cellular level. So it's really intensifies a spotlight on what's been hidden. And it could mean a great deal more visibility in the world. So I think it looks quite exciting, 2025. So that just gives you a sense of it. And again, you can come back to me and ask me questions. I'm not going to stop, because I doubt you probably know or have a sense of what's unfolding for you in 2025, or maybe you do, but we are short of time. So I've got one more slide, and then there may be some time for some questions at the end. So we've gone through all of this, a bit of a whistle-stop tour, covering some of the key themes and symbols for 2024 and what that might mean for you, and look a bit on how you can work out what year you're going into numerologically. So what's next, and you know, what's the so what really? Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for actually being here with me live and going through this and asking questions and engaging. It makes it much more exciting. And I hope for those that are watching it afterwards, because I say there's 44 people signed up for this tonight, that it gives them some ideas and thoughts on, you know, what it all means. And by all means, I'll send you a link to the replay afterwards. You know, you can always come back to me and ask me questions. That's a given. But if you really loved exploring the energy of the year and would like to get into colour a bit more or understand numerology more, there are two ways you can do that. The first is I'd like to run a 12-month online group where we'll be doing like mini energy readings once a month, and it will be based on, I meant to bring them so I could show them to you, but they're in my cupboard. I'm not going to get them, but there's a set of Colour Mirror Oracle cards, which are all like the colour bottles and essences. There's 44 of them. And so it's basically, you would then pick if you've got a set of the cards, pick your bottles, one for each month, starting from February. And then we'd probably pick 4 shadow cards from another deck, also related to the colours, and we'd intuitively place those in the right month. And then each month we'd meet together as a group and we talk about, well, what does that mean? And you get a little mini reading from me, but also then you start to form side of connection as a group. And so I'm saying to people that we'll be doing that in a group format, meeting, you know, at least once a month, talk about that. And that would only be £20 a month. And if you're a member of my community, that's £10 a month. And I'm going to limit that to 15 people. So if that's something that you're interested in, please let me know, because it's only a couple of weeks till February. I'd love to have you as part of the group. So that'd be great to start to explore that. And alternatively, or in addition to that, I'm very happy to do a one-to-one reading where we can look at your upcoming year from a numerological point of view and what that means to you, what's going to be coming up for you. And normally I do a 1 hour reading for £150, you know, people that are coaching with me. But I'm going to say that I will offer that as a 90-minute reading, so we can really get into the depths of it and then look at ways what's going to support you. Is it the Rescue Remedy Pack? Is it some of the, you know, the bottles of the year plus your numerological year, or what is it, you know? But that will all become clear through the reading. And you don't have to be based in Bedford. I do readings online all the time because my clients are global. I've got people in America, Namibia, Australia, Israel, you name it. So you don't have to be round the corner. So that takes us to the end of the session. We have got a few minutes to answer any questions, or I'd love to hear what you thought of it. Just take any comments in the time that remains. And yeah, thanks again for being here with me. Oh, thank you, Lisa. Anyone got any questions or comments?
I really enjoyed that, Kate. Thank you. I thought it was super interesting. Loads of information. I'm definitely going to have to watch it back again and listen to it. But yeah, it was excellent. Thank you.
No, I know it's a lot to take in, which is why I recorded it as well, because I think it's too much to take in one session, especially in an hour and a half, especially for those of us in the UK when it's nearly 10 o'clock. Have you got a radio on, Teresa? Because there's some noise or something in the background. But I do want to hear what your question, but I'm just sort of because.
Just no, it's the other room. Yeah, just really thank you very much for sharing that all with us, Kate. It was amazing to hear. Just made me smile because I'm a 25/7, so moving into a 5, the same as you, and obviously going to South Africa with yourself and with Lisa, and having the whole. I felt like I spent a lot of time, kind of just being with the Neptune bottle last year. And obviously going to South Africa and experiencing the whales and everything that the ocean has to translate to us was amazing. So excited to move into that kind of 5 year now and see where that takes me. And interesting, a lot of conversations today about just trusting and owning that 25 bottle of trust and allowing, and just what will be for the greater good, and sort of letting go of expectations and ego. So yeah.
Oh, bless you. And the big thing with the going into a 5 year, it's about speaking your message, Teresa, getting that out there.
Yes.
And coming from the heart, always.
Yeah.
Get out of the head. So I'm saying that for myself. And what Moira said, work with Archangel Michael. So I sprayed some before I came on tonight.
Oh yes.
So, you know, those
interesting conversations around Michael. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. But thanks for the feedback. I really appreciate it. It's always lovely to hear from people. And Canty's written in here, thank you so much. Lots of things you talked about resonated. You're very welcome, Canty. And Jane said thank you, and it's really interesting. So appreciate, you know, you're very welcome and appreciate you coming along. And anyone else got any questions, especially, or comments, especially anyone who's sort of new to all of this? There's a few of us. But don't feel you have to say anything, but you know, you have a chance to. Oh, yes, Suki. So Suki had a bereavement. I lost my mother-in-law, Suki, in November last year. So I have a sense of what you're going through. And if you are going into a 6th year, it's definitely about your partner, or if you know, relationships in general. So absolutely. So yeah. And thank you, saying bless you. Thank you so much. Bless you too. Thank you for coming. So I'm going to close this now, and in answer to your question, yes, Lisa. So thank you all so much for coming. I'm going to stop the recording.